I was telling Eileen that this is a huge honor for me. She's been my shiro for many decades. And she is going to start us off on an embodiment exercise. So lucky us, everybody, right?
Okay, so because I'm passionate about embodiment, and we'll talk about that. Chantal, I was showing Chantal behind the scenes. I get really nervous when I have to public speak. So one of the things that helps me is these simple embodiment exercises that Zuleika, who works with us at the company, and is also doing a program this afternoon at 4 in the Embodiment Lounge, she does these take-a-minute exercises. So I'm going to just invite you to take a minute. So if you will stand. All right, so I apologize and I'm a woman, so I have to apologize, don't I?
No, I was like, why are you apologizing? You're Eileen Fisher.
Okay. All right, so feet hip-width apart. You're going to be pressing down with your feet into the ground. And bend down and take your hands and interlock your fingers. And then turn your hands upside down and push out what you don't need. And then push forward with your hands while you're pushing down with your feet. So push out and down, out and up and down. And keep breathing. And up and down at the same time. And then pop your hands. And then float down. Welcome, everyone. Isn't that better?
So good. So I wanted to start with a story. I told Eileen when we were prepping for this call that I was at a social venture network gala, and I happened to be sitting at the Eileen Fisher table. There was 2 tables, and I sat, happenstance would have it, next to her CFO. And now this is, not to stereotype CFOs. I apologize if there are any of you out there. But he was a typical New York CFO, the suit.
He's not typical, but he looks typical.
For me, pretty dude. And I was curious. And the rest, I think the rest of the 2 tables were women. And I asked him, he had been there for decades. What is it like? What has it been like for you working at Eileen Fisher? And what this dude said, and I say that in quotes, was, I have been surrounded by love, and in my vocation in New York, it's a pretty competitive and sort of unsafe place to be yourself. And when I came to Eileen Fisher, I felt like I could, for once, actually be myself. And it's changed my relationship with myself, with my work, with the people that I work with, and especially my family. And I will never be the same person again. And I was so blown away, and he was emotive when he was talking about it, and very connected, and I, was just blown away. And so what is happening, Eileen, over at Eileen Fisher? What is happening over there?
Wow. Well, I don't know if I can sum that up so easily. It's a kind of moment-to-moment, day-by-day activity, but connection is a big part of it. Yeah. And I guess I'll just go back to start in the early days. Connection was a really important part of how I worked. Coming to the clothing business, not being a clothing designer, and not knowing anything about business, I really needed to work with other people, and I needed to, not know and ask and connect. And so I created this kind of culture of kind of co-creation or collaboration where everyone, worked together, and we talk about that kind of circles and things like that. I'm going to jump to Ken in a second. So over the years, we started developing different practices. that we use to kind of build the relational field and to help people to connect. And one simple thing is in the beginning of meetings, we ring a bell and we have a moment of silence. So we connect with ourselves first, because you can't really connect with others if you're not connected with yourself. And then we usually start our meetings with a check-in. And the check-ins, they can be really quick. It can be, what are you feeling right now? Or it can be, tell me something about your weekend. Or it can be, what's important about this meeting. Sometimes you can just make it really concrete. But that whole idea of just letting people bring into the room what's coming up for them, or maybe something that they're struggling with, it's just one small practice. But I think it opens the connection. And we do a lot of other kinds of practices. We have a lot of workshops and offsites where we do this active listening practice where, and if you're familiar with, anyway, I could go into the different practices. There's a lot of different things that we do. But basically we encourage people to bring their full selves and to share what's going on inside, what they're feeling. And sometimes, and we've seen over the years, it's gotten deeper, where people really will give, and we also do workshops on giving and receiving feedback. We have a lot of coaching and things of that nature. So over the years, the field has kind of developed where people will actually tell the truth. And truth is something that's a little in question, we know these days.
It's on the chopping block.
I know. But it's, in fact, really, really important. And, first of all, we kind of have to know ourselves and know what's true for us, or, know that something someone said offended us, and have to find the courage to go and tell them, or to invite feedback. For me to tell people, please tell me if I did something that upset you, or, give me feedback, which people struggle with me, but I've been really inviting that, and some of it is through just being vulnerable about, what I'm struggling with, or, finding ways to invite that. I wanted to say something and it went away. I was just thinking about Monica on the stage yesterday, and that she did that, and I was like, oh, great, I do that too. Well, maybe that's feminine leadership. No. Sorry, I don't want to offend women.
We're going to talk
we ramble
about that.
around in circles sometimes, and then we get back to the whole somewhere.
Yeah, well,
anyway.
The whole. That's exactly where I wanted to go.
Okay.
You talk about wholeness a lot, and you talk about being able to really be yourself. What does wholeness mean to you?
Wholeness. Oh, wholeness is one of my passions, along with embodiment. Okay, I could take that in different directions. But let me just start by, in terms of people, wholeness is about coming fully, wholly into yourself, and, really bringing that into the workplace. So a lot of things that would have been taboo, as we were talking about personal things and sharing, what you're feeling, is part of wholeness. And so that you bring that in, and you also get a lot more. So you get more. You might get more sadness, or you might get more upset, or even sometimes anger or frustration. But you also get more creativity and connection and joy. Oh, I'm just thinking about Brene Brown's TED Talk, and that whole idea of vulnerability. And when you bring the feelings in, you have to kind of bring in both sides. So you kind of open the field to, what's the pain point right now? What are people struggling with? And then it opens things. Anyway, ask me more. Wholeness. Okay, so wholeness. So there's, I think of it in different ways. So I think of it in terms of just showing up as more whole as people, and the company being more whole. So over the years, we have kind of deepened our work and given more permission to be whole, but be whole as a company. So I really think that, well, we can talk about this too, the corporation thing, but that things are, that it's, I just want to say, I get two thoughts at once. Okay, that's that mind thing again.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
all
done
right.
very well
So,
let it
come back to the body thing. Okay. So the wholeness thing right now for us is that we've kind of deepened our work in the company from, our mission about creating simple and comfortable and beautiful and sustainable clothes to actually, we're saying now we grow clothes, we grow people, and we grow business for good. So really, yes, really sort of taking that on as our whole mission. And we believe that all companies need to do that. That we need a new business model. And that, can I ramble into this?
Yes,
okay.
please.
Oh, man. Okay, so we know that the business model that we have going on isn't really working. That, the rich are getting richer, the 1% has, the wealth, and it gets more and more so. We saw what happened in Middle America with this last election, that people are left out, that salaries for Middle America aren't going up. And so at the same time, we're using 1.5 planets every year of resources. So this concept of growth, massive growth, is not a sustainable model. And it's really not making people happy either, for the most part. I mean, we like to grow our business, but we are lately saying it has to be good growth. We don't want to grow just to feed the monster. I heard that in a meeting one time, and it just set me off. So that was about 3 or 4 years ago, and I realized that some people actually felt that we, just had to keep doing certain things in order to, feed the business that we had created. And, I just created let's just stop and slow down and think about if we really need to do that and why are we doing that. And really, we can be profitable at a lot of different sizes. We don't have to. Bigger's not necessarily better, especially.
Yeah, and there's a lot of emphasis in the entrepreneurial world where I think there's, venture capitalists, they want to see the 20x, they want big, 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 they want it big and fast. And so what you're saying is really important.
And we think the goal is to build a business that we can sell so we can get rich.
Yeah.
Wow. And then what? Because we find that being rich doesn't necessarily make us happier. So what are we doing and why are we doing that? Actually what we did is I sold 40% of the business to the employees. So I got a chunk of money if I needed that, or just to diversify. Actually, I had other reasons for doing it that had to do with my will and realizing that, anyway, I don't want to go into the details of that. I told that story, that would be another whole meeting. Things like ESOPs, or we're a B Corp, and it's really an emerging, wonderful business model, because to be a B Corp, you have to measure your environmental and your social impacts. And, that really holds a company accountable. And so, wow, what would it be if all of the corporations on the stock exchange had to measure their environmental and their social impacts, and that, they had to be held accountable for that? I mean, it would be a really different it would be a different world, and corporations couldn't, pollute our water and our air without taking responsibility for that. So, B Corps is one way, ESOPs are another way, and just sharing profits if you're small and you can't, you're not ready to be an ESOP. But I just put out that the goal of selling, and going public, is a questionable goal, and we really need to reevaluate that. And anyway, so.
Well, just along these lines, right now there are a lot of corporations who are kind of taking a stand in the current socio-political environment, and I'm just curious to see, and it can be a delicate thing for a company of your size, and I'm curious to see how you're making space for people to connect with the issues that are important outside of the company, and yet, kind of maintaining a balance for people that might have a variety of views.
Right. We definitely have some variety of views, we found out.
They're out there.
Well, we had a campaign in the fall called Your Choice Has Power. And we ran some ads, and we did some social media work around that idea. And we said, when women vote, women win. When women run, women win, things like that. And we had some interesting reactions to that. So, how we, but I think we held, I think we didn't, we didn't say who to vote for, but we did say, your voice matters, and your choice has power, which is another whole thing. So I want to talk about that. Okay. But I want to talk about the political thing too, or I really don't want to talk about it. But one of the things I feel about it, and I've been struggling to find my voice and the company voice around it, because I really feel it's important to hold a kind of a higher space. I love what Michelle Obama says, when they go low, we go high. I'm really always trying to kind of hold that higher place and to hold the open conversation. I certainly know people who are maybe on the other side of the political divide than I am. And, my feeling is, how do I hold that? And how do I have an open and loving conversation with someone I want to, I don't know what I want to do, but so how do I be, with my frustration or anger or whatever? I mean, there are a few people that I struggle to call these days because I know we think a little differently. But that's very personal. But I think it is all personal. It is all personal. Every person we connect with, it
love that you just said that. It is all personal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but back to the company, because it is all personal, but then how we make decisions.
Right.
So, for example, around the Women's March, there's a lot of passion in the company. We're a women's company, to support the Women's March. So we decided that we would support it and, send a bus. And Leanne, who works directly with me, was our champion, and she organized the trip. But we decided not to make a big deal about it on our social media, not to put it out there in that way. So, it was a hard decision, but we wanted to keep the doors open. And it wasn't about business. It was more about really, we have stores in places where we might actually be able to hold a conversation that could open some minds, we would be hopeful of. So we haven't gotten to having those kind of dialogues in our store, but it's a fantasy, it's a vision, So maybe it's possible.
Yeah, that's a great vision. So we have been, hearing connection, making space for emotions, and circular deep democracy is how you call it. And so that's a very feminine paradigm in terms of leadership.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And you also are a champion of embodied leadership.
Yes.
Which we had talked about as also a feminine principle, the body. And and I'm curious to know, how did you get into even caring about the body? Because I know you've had a strong meditation practice.
Right.
And what's that connection for you?
Oh, that's very good. Okay, so I am a kind of spacey person by nature. I tend to float off, so I loved meditating. It was very blissful. And I still meditate every day. But a few years ago, I started to really realize that I would spend my half-hour meditating and, I kept forgetting to come back to my breath. I kept forgetting to come back. And somehow, I'm trying to remember how I actually started to make the body connection. I had some different experiences. Well, years ago, I met Zuleika, who's here, and I did that. I demonstrated that practice. And I noticed that when I spent time with her, and doing, the movement exercise that I felt much more enlivened. And then when I would meditate, I would drift, and I drift a lot in life, in meetings and stuff, and I'm always having to kind of bring myself back. Some of it I like to think is a creative process, but some of it really is fear.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've been, really getting in touch with that. So I'm trying to think of what happened where I started to really realize. Well, I think we opened the learning lab a few years ago, and around that time, I was doing. I was starting to recognize something about embodiment, and I read Wendy Palmer's Leadership Embodiment book, and we brought her to the Learning Lab, and let's see, what else did I do? And I'm working with Marcelo, who is also here, and he might be doing his thing right now. He does work around embodied purpose, and I started doing some somatic therapy work, so coming into the body. I don't know if most of you are familiar with some of those kinds of practices, but what I really started to realize that being in my body was really hard for me. That I was a clothing designer, I designed clothes, I worked with the body, but it was more kind of from the outside. And so, like, when I was beginning to start to let myself drop in and notice what my body was telling me, I started to realize that I was missing a vast amount of my life force and the guidance and the kind of information that my body was giving me. I was kind of ignoring sometimes or pushing down the anger or the fear. I wasn't letting myself feel things. And so when I started doing more of this embodiment work, I started to realize how differently I started to feel and how I started to show up. And I began to just be really passionate about sharing it. Whenever I like something, like a certain garment or, clothes, whatever, I want to share it, or practices around, the circle and the way we work and that kind of thing. When I find something that I love, I want other people to have it. So when I started to sort of wake up and feel more vibrant in my body, I wanted to share that. And so part of that is starting to come through the Learning Lab. We started and we have the Embodiment Lounge here because that was Soren's idea, because when we were talking and getting inspired about that, we decided to bring the Embodiment Lounge here to try to share, but at the same time, I'm learning. So I always do kind of selfishly, what's good for me. Like I started meditation at the company because I wanted to be able to go on Sunday and meditate and have a group. So it's really, it's like the clothes. I'm kind of selfish. So, but I always find that if I love it, it tends to resonate somewhere with some people. So, this embodiment thing is so interesting because yesterday I was walking around I kept feeling that spacey thing again, and it's sort of I disconnect. And this morning I woke up and I felt anxious again. I wake up often in the morning really anxious, and I have a practice that gets me into my body very quickly, and sometimes I have the opportunity to stand up and do some of the physical practices, but I have a small one that I do, and I can do it in meetings.
Can we do it now?
Oh, you want to do it now?
Okay, it's
very simple.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just breathe, relax, feel. So let's just do it together. So take a breath. And relax something. Maybe your shoulders, maybe your hips, maybe your feet, maybe your toes. And notice what you feel. Let's take another breath. Relax something else. Maybe your jaw, your hands, and feel. So good.
So good.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
And I wake up anxiety-stricken many mornings. And I just go, oh, I can do my breathe, relax, feel. And it's just like freedom. Just like, I might have to do it 8 or 10 times, but it works. It works.
Well,
so I just offer those little things, and I'm so excited to offer more of those things. You know?
Well, it's interesting.
And to learn. I love learning.
Oh, yes. Well, you know, one of the big learnings for me was, again, leaning into this feminine leadership is this concept of trust, you know, and allowing. And that was one of the ones that I would always have as so it lived here. Trust, I'm trusting. But until it actually went into my body, like trust does not exist until you can get some relief in your body. Otherwise, it's just a thought. But until it manifests and gives you release through the body, it's actually not, it doesn't,
it's not real.
Yeah, it's not actualized. So I really appreciate the work. I'm getting flashing lights. I'm getting whispers. So I think we need to
say one other thing?
Yes.
I think it's really important also to know that when you change your body or you move your body, or like if you just like do that, and you can open your heart. Or if you you know, go like that, you can open to the room and invite and send your energy out.
Can we just do that? Like, can we just like, oh my gosh, how great is that?
And the other things that Lake was showing us yesterday, when you move around like this and you skip, you can feel joyful. You can bring
We're going to have
joy into your
Eileen's
life.
dance class after this in the Embodiment Lounge.
I wanted to be a dancer, you know. You were asking me that. Okay, so what was the? You want to? Are we finished? Or is our time up? Or?
I think we're finished. But thank you all so much, and thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.